Divrei Torah tonight are dedicated to Leilu Nishmas Yisrael Aizik ben Yehudah Leib Misham Shev Naliyah. Brisker Rav was on his deathbed. This was in the 1950s. And it was about this time of year. He actually was nifter the first moments of Yom Kippur. But about this time of year, he was on his deathbed, and tefillas were being said throughout the world that he should have a refuah shlema. In the Mir Yeshiva, there was a kimus, there was a gathering, and Reb Chaim Shmulevitz spoke. And he invoked a Rashi in Parshas Hazinu. It says in the pasuk that Hashem spoke to Moshe be'etzem hayom hazeh lemor, that it was in the middle of that day that he should ascend the mountain where he would pass on. And Rashi is intrigued by the choice of words. That it says be'etzem hayom hazeh, in the middle of that day. So Rashi quotes the Maimer Chazal that there are three places where this expression be'etzem hayom hazeh is used. First, in the case of the Mabul, when Hashem told Noach to enter the Teva, he told him to enter be'etzem hayom hazeh. The second case was regarding Yetzias Mitzrayim, that the Yetzias Mitzrayim took place be'etzem hayom hazeh, in the middle of the day. And third, Moshe Rabbeinu's ascending the mountain took place be'etzem hayom hazeh. So Rashi says that there was a kavanah behind these three instances. When Noach was about to enter the Teva, the people said, "We'll show you. We'll smash the Teva. You'll have no place to escape, and you'll see there won't be a flood. It's not going to rain. There'll be no mabul." So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Noach, "Go into the Teva be'etzem hayom hazeh in broad daylight, and you'll see they'll be helpless. They won't be able to stop you. You'll be able to go into the Teva. They won't destroy it. The mabul will come. You'll survive. They'll die." When it came to Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Egyptians certainly felt that they could restrain the Jewish people. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "No, be'etzem hayom hazeh, in broad daylight, you'll leave Mitzrayim and you'll see, they won't be able to stop you." And the third instance is Afkan b'misaso shel Moshe. It says be'etzem hayom hazeh, lefi shahayu Yisrael oimrim. The Jews said that ein anu manichim oso, we're not going to let him die. Adam she'otzionu Mitzrayim, the man who took us out of Mitzrayim, and he split the sea and brought us the man and gave us the Torah. Ein anu manichim oso, we're not going to let him. We're not going to let him die. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "Hareini machnisa b'chatzi hayoim, I will take him from you in broad daylight." So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz asked, I understand, in the first two instances, the people reasonably thought they could stop Noach from going into the Teva, and they could stop the Egyptians from leaving Mitzrayim. But what did they think? How are they going to stop Moshe Rabbeinu from dying? What could they possibly do to stop the Malach HaMavos? So Reb Chaim said, you see from here the kayach of tefillah, the power of tefillah, that they would have davened, they would have been mispalo. And with tefillah, you could actually stop the Malach HaMavos himself. This was Reb Chaim Shmuz. So you can imagine such a hisoyer, such an arousal. You give a shmuz like that, and you tell the assembled that you have the power through prayers to stop the Malach HaMavos. You can imagine what the tefillahs, what the Tehillim were like. Mamish, the walls were shaking. People davening for the recovery of the Brisker Rav. Someone went to the Brisker Rav and told him what Reb Chaim had said. the kayach of tefillah, tefillah could stop the Malach HaMavos himself. So the Brisker Rav said, Adank Reb Chaim for the Varma Werter. Thank Reb Chaim for his very warm words. But that's not pshat in the Rashi, the Rav said. It's not pshat. What is pshat in the Rashi? There's a Gemara Masechah Sukkah. The Gemara tells a story. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Raglai de bar Inosh inun arvin bay. A person's legs are his guarantors. La asar de mizboy tamon, the place the person needs to be, tamon mavil and yosei. His legs take him there. Because every person finds himself where he's meant to be. His legs are his guarantors. So more tells a story. Hano tarti kushoi. There were two kushim. And Rashi says, of course, this is euphemism. Sometimes a person who's unusually handsome is called a kushi. They were in front of Shlomo HaMelech. They served Shlomo HaMelech. They were the two scribes, two secretaries of Shlomo HaMelech. And they were undoubtedly very talented people, very capable people. One day, Shlomo HaMelech saw that the Malach HaMavos was upset. Why are you upset? So the Malach HaMavos told him, I was given a very difficult job. I was given the job to take away these two fellows from this world, and I can't do it. Can't do it. So Shlomo HaMelech realized that sooner or later the Malach HaMavos will be able to do it. So he figured I should take precautions. So we decided to send them to the city of Luz. Luz was a city, about which we'll see in a few moments, where the Malach HaMavos had no dominion. If you lived in Luz, you lived forever. So we sent them to Luz. Just as they reached the district of Luz, they didn't step into the city, they were just at the threshold of the city. Shechivu, they both died. One step outside of the city, they both died. L'machar, the next day, Chazia Malach HaMavos Tavakabarach. Shlomo HaMelech saw the Malach HaMavos was very happy. He was in a good mood. So he asked him, why are you happy? So he said, Amrlai, he answered, Ba'asar du'ba'u minoi, in the place where they wanted me to take them from, Taman Shad Resinu, that's where you sent them to. You see, the problem the Malach HaMavos had was, because the Malach HaMavos was given an assignment to take them from a very specific place. Take them from that spot, which is one step out of the city of Luz. And the Malach HaMavos was figuring, how am I going to get them to go to that place? But you sent them there. And that's how I was able to take them. So immediately, Pasach Shlomo HaMelech said, you see from here, this Yisod. Ragloi de bar Inosh inun arvin bay. A person's legs are his guarantors. La sardim is boy tamon movilon yosei. Where he needs to be, that's where his legs take him. So said the Brisker Rav, what do you see from this Gemara? You see from this Gemara that there are two dinim. That there's a time, and there's a place. That there's a time the person has to leave this world, and there's a place from which the person has to leave this world. And even if your time is up, but if you're not in the right place, you can't be taken. So this is the pshat in the Rashi. Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, Alei el har ha'avorim hazeh har nevo, go up to the mountain, umus bahar, and die on the mountain. So Moshe Rabbeinu, his time was coming, but he could only be taken from that spot. So the Bnei Yisrael said that we'll stop him. We won't let him climb the mountain. And therefore, even if his time is up, he can't be taken, because he's meant to die from that spot. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, you'll go up and you'll see they won't be able to stop you. That the Brisker Rav said on his deathbed is the real pshat in the Rashi. And it shows several things. First of all, the tremendous clarity that even in his illness. But the yesod of this Gemara is an amazing thing. A person's legs are his guarantors. Where the person is meant to be, that's where he is. And let's talk about that city of Luz for a minute. How was there a city where the Malach HaMavos had no shlita? The Malach HaMavos had no control in that city of Luz. What was the story behind that? So there's another Gemara. It's Gemara Maseches Shaita. It tells the story there. It says in the first parak of Shoftim that the tribe of Yosef wanted to conquer the city of Beis Kel. Beis Kel had once upon a time been called Luz, as it says in Chumash. And they came to the city, and it was a very odd city. The city was surrounded by a wall, and you couldn't figure out how to get in. There was no apparent entrance to the city. So they couldn't get into the city. So it says that the Shoimrim, the sentries, saw a person who apparently had come from the city, and they asked him, show us the way into the city, and we'll treat you nicely. So it says in the Pasuk, Vayiru HaShoimrim ish yotzim min ha'ir. The guards, the sentries, saw a man leaving the city, and they said, Hareinu na'as mavay ha'ir. Show us the entry to the city. V'yasinu imcha chesed. And we'll do chesed with you. Uchsiv, and it says, Vayarein es mavay ha'ir. So the person acquiesced, and he showed them the entry to the city. So what was the kindness? The kindness was that in the war, the Bnei Yisrael annihilated the city, but they spared this one man. That was the reward, that they didn't kill him. So the Pasuk says, Vayelech ho'ish eretz hachitim. That man traveled to Eretz Hachitim. Vayiven here, he built a new city. Vayikra shma Luz, and he called it Luz. And that's a very appropriate name, because that's where he was from. Beis Kel originally was called Luz, and that city was wiped out, so he went somewhere else, started a new city, and he called it Luz. He shma ad hayom hazeh. And the Pasuk says that the name of that city is Luz until this very day, until today. So the Gemara tells us, what does it mean ad hayom was until this very day? It means until mamash this very day. He Luz shetzayvim batchelas. This was the city of Luz, where Tchelas was dyed. That was the industry of the city. He Luz Shabbat Sancherev Bilbala. Sancherev, who conquered the entire Eretz Yisrael except for Yerushalayim, did not touch this city of Luz. Nebuchadnezzar v'lo hechriva. Nebuchadnezzar, he came and laid Eretz Yisrael waste, but did not destroy Luz. V'yach Malach HaMavos ein lo rishus la'avar ba. And even the Malach HaMavos can't enter Luz. So the question is, so what do old people do when people get fed up? They've lived too long, and the Malach HaMavos has no entry to the city. What do? Elos kingdom shabah bizman shedaiton kotza alehem. When they're tired of living, yotzim chutz l'chayim, they walk out of the city, they mace him and they die. But in the city, nobody dies. Now, what did this person do? This Knani, what did he do? He didn't do anything. Lo dibra b'piv, he didn't say anything, he didn't open his mouth. V'lo halach b'raglov, didn't walk with his feet. The Gemara says that how did he show them the entry to the city? So according to one opinion, he pointed with his finger. According to the other opinion, he made a motion with his mouth. So we didn't say anything. Probably they didn't speak the same language, so we wouldn't have been able to communicate that way. And he didn't walk with them, he didn't accompany them, he just gestured. And nevertheless, Garam Hatzala Lo Ulazaro Atsof Kol Adairis, he saved his own life, he saved his children's life, he saved the lives of all future generations. So if a person does a mitzvah of Levaya Baraglav, if a person escorts a person, does an actual mitzvah of walking, Alachas Kama V'Kama, certainly so, he should merit great SLICHOS. So this is the city of Luz, and this is where Shlomo HaMelech thought to send these two fellows. And it was a good idea, except that they died one step outside of the city, because this is where they were meant to be, because their legs are guarantors. These two Gemaras taken together point to a reality which we have to absorb. It is counter to everything that we think. We think, number one, that the mitzvahs we do, especially the small ones, make no difference at all. If I do the mitzvah, I don't do the mitzvah, I get out of bed, I don't get out of bed, I daven well, I don't daven well, I say a kind word, I don't say a kind word, really makes no difference. But on the other hand, the decisions I make big differences. If I make a decision about my education or my career or my business or my investments, that is going to make a difference. If I make good decisions, I'll be successful. If I make bad decisions, I'll fail. And therefore, I have to be prudent and wise and investigate the options, and so on and so forth. What do these Gemaras tell us? Number one, that the smallest mitzvah, saying a word, not even saying a word, pointing with a finger, making a gesture with one's mouth, that is a deed which has consequences that it can give life to you, to your children, to your grandchildren, asof kol hadayros, for all eternity. A mitzvah, a small mitzvah, an easily performed mitzvah. And on the other hand, the schemes and the planning, all the cheshbonos, ultimately make no difference, because your legs are your guarantors. Where you're meant to be, you will be, and there's nothing you can do to prevent that. If you have to be in a certain place because your time is up and that is the place from which you're to be taken, you will be there no matter what precautions you take. It's a total reorientation of our thinking. It's the exact opposite of what we tend to think. If we would integrate the truth of these two Gemaras into our thinking, our lives would be different, because we would understand what really makes a difference are the mitzvahs that we do and the Torah that we learn, the chasadim we perform, and ultimately, yes, we have to make a shtadlus. That's a gzera shamayim, that we have to live prudently, and so on and so forth. But really, it makes no difference, because our legs are our guarantors. They will take us where we are meant to be. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. It's something to think about year-round, but it's certainly something to think about this time of year. Siyam Neiroyim, Elul is ending, Rosh HaShana is coming. And before we can even embark on the process of tshuva, we have to impress this idea upon ourselves, that what really counts are our mitzvahs and masim tovim. That will be keveya, that will in turn fix what the gzeira shemayim will be, and the gzeira shemayim will make all the difference in our lives. We may be going through the motions of planning and scheming and investing, etc., but ultimately the difference will be made by the decree in Shamayim, and that decree to a great extent will be made on the basis of our merit, our mitzvahs, our aveiros, our tefillas. If a person would allow that lesson to sink in, then there'd be a greater sense of urgency in these coming days. Tikkun hamasim, improving our deeds, will come first and foremost. There'd be a seriousness. There'd be a kavod reish. There would be genuine shuva, genuine change. We have to think about it. The hour is late. But let's not forget what Reb Chaim also said. The Brisker Rav may have disagreed and said that it's not pshat in the Rashi. But the point is also a well-taken point. That there is a special kayach of tefillah which goes beyond and can override the Gzeira Shamayim. Tosfos says in Maseches Rosh HaShana that in the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, one of the Yud Gimel Midas is Chanun. Kadosh Baruch Hu is Chanun. So the question is, what does that mean? We have so many Midas Harachamim, Racham, Rachapayim, Rav Chesed. What is the definition of Chanun? The Tosfos brings the pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim, where it says that if we oppress orphans and widows, and they cry out to Hashem, Hashem says, "V'shamati, I will listen, ki chanun oni, for I am chanun, I am compassionate." So Tosfos says, chanun is the midah harachamim that Hashem is shemei tefillah, that Hashem listens to our tefillahs. Tefillah is really a problematic philosophical question. What is the point of davening? If we deserve, we'll get it anyway. If we don't deserve, l'chorah, we won't get it. So what does the tefillah accomplish? What's the point of davening? The answer is that the assumption isn't true. That there are things that you otherwise wouldn't get, but through the kayach of tefillah, you will get. What is the kayach of tefillah? I think on the simplest level, we can understand it as part of our common experience. Let's say a person comes to you and asks for a favor. So you're thinking, should I do it, shouldn't I do it? And the person says, listen, I'm counting on you. I have no one else I can turn to. If you don't help me, I'm finished. You'd be hard-pressed to say no. If the person has no one else to turn to and he comes to you and say, only you can save me. So you're going to say no to a person like that? You feel you have to help. How could you not help? When a person comes to the Ribono Shel Olam in tefillah and he says, Ribono Shel Olam, I have a problem. There's only you can help me, nobody else. So even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu otherwise was not inclined to help, because I'm not deserving, but if I tell him I'm counting on him, I'm relying on him, so even HaKadosh Baruch Hu melts. And that's the midas harachim of Chanun. That if you come to the Ribono Shel Olam and you say, Ribono Shel Olam, I'm counting on you, then the HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds. Now the important thing is that when we daven, we really mean that. That we really are counting on the Ribono Shel Olam. We're not just going through the motions and saying, but really I'm going to take care of myself. We have to recognize that we really are dependent on Him and only Him. There's an amazing halacha, put down Shulchan Aruch based on the Gemara on Shabbos, that when a person davens, he's meant to hold his hands together. Holds his hands together. The Gemara says, Rava pacha yarei el matzli. Rava held his hands together when he davened. So what is the idea of holding your hands together? So the Chidushei Aran says, the idea of holding your hands together is as if you have no hands. Right? If your hands are not held together, you can move them around. If you have hands, you can help yourself. But if you clench your hands, it's as if you have no hands. That means you're helpless. That is the stance for tefillah. The stance for tefillah is to stand before the Ribono Shel Olam as if I have no hands. I am totally helpless. And maybe it wouldn't be so far-fetched to imagine that that's the idea of standing with your feet together as well. Because you only can walk because you have 2 feet. Think about it for a second. If you only had 1 foot with no knee, you couldn't even hop. And that's how we stand. So we are totally helpless, as if we have no hands and no feet. And we beseech the Ribono Shel Olam. We are totally dependent on you. When we do that, we tap into the midah of Chanun. That's the kayach of tefillah. But it has to be emes. It has to be true. Karav Hashem l'chol karav. Hashem is close to all that call Him. L'chol asher yikru'uhu ve'emes. Only people that call Him ve'emes. If we live our lives as if we are in control, we are in control. We are the masters of our own destiny. Just that we go through the motions. After all, we are Orthodox Jews. So we come to shul, we daven 3 times a day, we say SLICHOS. So the call is not be'emes. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But if it's be'emes, if it's true, because we understand that we are utterly dependent on Him, that the reality is that there's nothing that works without His consent. So the kriya, the call to Him is be'emes, it's true. So then Karav Hashem l'chol Karav, Hashem is close. Hashem is close. And Hashem hears the tefillah. That's what we learn from the story of Rabbi Yochanan too. That if we absorb this idea of Raglaya the Barinish in an Arvanlay, that really our lives are totally in the Ribono Shel Olam's control, then our tefillah becomes effective. Then our tefillah becomes meaningful. But if we fail to learn this lesson, if we really think we are in control, that with good planning we can solve any problem, then the tefillah lacks that quality of emes, and the tefillah doesn't even work. That, I believe, is the aleph base. That is the first point we have to absorb going into the Yom Noraim. The idea of a Yom Hadin, the idea of a day of judgment, the idea of Rosh HaShana, is that the decisions that are going to be made on Rosh HaShana make a difference, and only those make a difference. And maybe throughout the year there's an illusion that our choices have genuine consequences, but in reality, everything is totally, everything depends on the Gzeira of Rosh HaShana. And if a person would absorb that, how could you not take it seriously? How could you go through these days as if it's one big joke? It's not possible. It's not possible. If you would understand it, it would be different. We'd all be different. I would be different. But it's perhaps too painful to contemplate. So we build defenses. And God knows there are enough distractions to spare us from these very painful thoughts. But that's perhaps why SLICHOS is not in the midst of our busy day. We carve out a time for SLICHOS where we would not otherwise be busy. It's night. It's quiet. There's nothing calling for our attention. This is a time that otherwise we'd be asleep. Hopefully. And without those distractions and without those pressures, we can face reality and understand that we are really in a bind. Because we are absolutely, totally dependent on the Ribono Shel Olam, and in His calculus, our mitzvahs, our aveiros, our tshuva is going to make all the difference. And that's the attitude that we have to come in with SLICHOS. Ribono Shel Olam is so kind to us. He's ready to be kind to us. And we are humiliated. We are embarrassed. When we think over the past year and the past years in their lives, there's so much to be apologetic for. But it's not too late. We could change. And that's the beauty of tshuva. The beauty of tshuva is that it doesn't take a long time. We don't have to jump through hoops of fire. But if a person changes his thinking and changes his orientation, he is transformed into a totally new being. A new cheshbon, a new gzeira, a new life. That's the koyach of tshuva. Slichos really should be the culmination of the process. After we've gone through the painful soul searching of Cheshbon HaNefesh and Charata and Azivas HaChet and Kabbalah Haba, finally we verbalize the vidui and we ask for forgiveness. Somehow perhaps we've reversed the order. We begin with Slichos. But as Mark Twain once said, anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly. If we're not going to do it the right way, at least let's do it the wrong way. So we'll begin with Slichos. But the Slichos then has to be followed up by a genuine Shuva. It can't just be that we say Slichos and we feel, okay, we said, maybe we even felt some emotional longing, maybe we even shed a tear, and shai, Aizik again. Whereas the Slichos is really part of a process, and that process really is true of its change. This is what it's all about. The Gemara in the Sukkah, immediately before the story of Rabbi Yochanan, brings Tanu Rabbanon that by the Simchas Beis HaShoeva in the Beis HaMikdash, it says the Hasidim and Anshe Maisi used to dance. So Tanu Rabbanon, Yesh Mehem Oimrim, some said, Ashrei Yalduseinu Shlo Baisha Ziknuseinu. Fortunate is our youth that it didn't shame our old age. That we can look back at our youth and we have nothing to be embarrassed about. Elu Chasidim v'Anshe Maisa. V'yesh mehem oimrim, others said, Ashrei ziknuseinu shekipras yalduseinu. Fortunate is our old age, which atoned for our youth. Elu balei tshuva. These are the balei tshuva. They had what to be embarrassed about. But Baruch Hashem, before it was too late, they repented. Elu ve'elu oimrim. But both groups say, Ashrei mish leichata. Fortunate is the person who never sinned. Umisha chata yoshev yimchalo. But whoever sinned, let him repent. This is what we have to remember. Halavai, we should be among those who could look back at the past and say our conscience is clear. But if not, if we are in the vast majority who have skeletons in our closet, at least if we do tshuva, if we change, if we repent, we can say, Ashrei ziknu seinu shlo baishas yal. Shekipra yal du seinu. Happy is our old age that atoned for our youth. Ashrei misha loichata, umisha chata yoshev yimchalo. Because we all have to engage in this cheshbon nefesh. And our starting point is to understand that it makes a difference. It makes a difference. There's going to be a mishpat in several days on Rosh HaShana, and that is going to take into very careful consideration our actions, our deeds, our words, our thoughts, and it is going to make all the difference. A person who thinks that I will be clever and I will be able to work my way around that divine judgment is making a very serious mistake. But through tshuva, through tefillah, the unique kayach of tefillah, we can overcome that gezerah. The Ribono Shel Olam should give us all the kayach and the insight that over the next few days we should use our time properly, we should direct our thoughts properly, and the tefillahs of Klal Yisrael, the tefillahs that are said tonight throughout the world on the night of SLICHOS, should be niskabel, should be accepted, that all of Klal Yisrael should be nichtav and nechtam, written and sealed for a siva ve-chatima tova, b'sifron shel tzadikim, for a year of health and parnasa, shalom al Yisrael. It should be a year of Avodas Hashem, of Talmud Torah, a year of Hatzlacha, and a year that we can look back at next Elul with great pride and satisfaction.